When Prabhuji was a young boy, like many children, he was very playful and enthusiastic and curious. But he had a very special approach to games and to life, in which life itself was an entire big game. Games were not events inside life that started when he came back from school and ended when he was called for dinner, but they were the background of all other occurrences. Most of us for sure remember how when we used to be children, we used to enjoy playing and try to prolong the enjoyment of playing and resist the intrusion of the outside world with all the rules and obligations. But Prabhuji had such a unique mindset that he discovered some way out of this conflict. And he designed very special games that did not require any object like balls or dolls or soldiers, that were not limited to any time constraint, and that again did not need him to resist or object anything or anyone. Prabhuji did not become upset at the intrusion of the world and did not reject it, but found a way to resolve it. So in the specific game that Prabhuji formulated, he was a resident inside his own body. More particularly, he was a driver. And his body became the car that he observed all day long driving. So whatever activity that needed to happen, such as going to school or coming back, it was part of the game in which his car, that was his body, drove back home, and he was sitting inside and enjoying and watching this car driving. And Prabhuji became more and more immersed in this game, again that included whatever happened in his life, from the simplest, most ordinary activities to the most dramatic ones, such as an earthquake that once happened and all the individuals that were around the table entered into hysteria. Prabhuji continued to sit quietly, peacefully, observe his car, and feed this car, this body machine, with a soup.
See, we talk about to be God and all that. Many things in my life are rare, weird. But the most weird thing, that was until I was 8 years old. I was a very normal child, go to school, but I was very imaginative. I have a every game I did, the tables I put opposite, and I was a pirate and was a sheep. And I ran after the ducks like they was Indians. I was a cowboy. And everything was like that. And one day, I like very much cars, small cars, to play with them. I put them a cable and went with them at home, like to see the car walk. And then I went to the streets after, and I began to do around all our street. I go with the car, and I like to do big trips, like from here to there. And from there, I imagine, because I cannot play when I go to the school, I cannot go with a car. So I say, how I can use a small car when I go to school. And I think I will be the car. I am a car, imagine. And then I go, and when I go to school, sit in the bus, I was a machine, like a tractor. And then I think, but wait a moment, I am the driver. What is the driver? I am the driver. Inside I sit. Where? Somewhere. Somewhere in some. And then I develop in the center of the body, in the center, I am the driver. So I began to go like that. And when I wake up, I always say, okay, I am the driver. Do the order, I wake up. I sit Trum. And then I play with it. Like in the school, I was sitting in front of the teacher like Hanaya, like, yeah. And I look. I come back home, and even I began to see people. My parents see them, and when I see them, I open my eyes, and I was like the driver inside. That was the game.
When Prabhuji tells this story, he relates to it as if it was a very typical, regular, imaginative idea of a child. But I think that we cannot overlook the obvious connection between this very particular idea of this particular game to the fact that Prabhuji in fact recognized his existence as different than the body, as observer of the body, years later, and confirming that this is the truth not just of himself, but of all of us. So in fact what happened in this special game is that Prabhuji, without knowing anything about meditation, he was just 8 years old, instructed himself into meditation. And as time went by, he became more and more absorbed in his game, in his experience, until at a certain point something special happened. In one very ordinary evening, Prabhuji entered into his room, sat on this bed, he was ready to go to sleep. He did not turn off the light was already off, and in this very ordinary evening, something very extraordinary happened.
And one night that I will never forget, my parents say, go to bed. Okay, I go to bed. Around 10, maybe in the night. And I sit in my bed and I close the light. I remember, I come and I didn't turn on the light. I only enter and I sit in my bed. And I like the driver, I put and then in a moment, when I wanted to be very deep the driver, I am the driver, very deep. And I was totally centrated in the driver, not in the car. And everything in me is part of the car. Then in a moment, 7 lights from somewhere in the night, from the night, come like a line and enter from here. And in a moment, the mind, senses, everything jump back like this. My mind stopped to be in contact with the body, and now she is looking at consciousness, contact with consciousness. And from there something take me back, and I saw all the universe, everything, trillions and quadrillions of planets and stars. Wow, where I am. And then more back to an immense ocean of light. And I was not there, I was that ocean of light, vibrant with love, with existence, with peace. Wow. And in a moment, come back the universe, beautiful, everything, and simultaneously everywhere, in every planet, everywhere simultaneously. And then back to the mind in that direction, and the mind go back. And I open my eyes. What's that? It's a child, 8 years old. I ran to the mirror, I look, I was red of happiness. So I never felt happy like that. And I ran to my parents. I think they sit and I say, Father, what? Now I know, because I see the big people, for sure, they know everything. I say, the universe is inside. Everything is inside. All the planets is inside, the stars, everything. And I say, what? You have a dream, what do you think about it? And the ocean of silver light is so adorable, it's so beautiful. What do you talk about? My mother say, maybe he was in the room and passed an airplane and he saw the light there. And then I understand. That is the moment that my parents stopped to be Superman and Batman. They don't know. From that day, I went to school and I remember I asked my teacher of Spanish, grammatic. He used to teach us literature and all that, and I say, I have a question. All the children's well. I say, yes. We was near the blackboard. It was so important moment for me, and I hit him until here. He stand. I say, what? And I say, how we can go back to this ocean of light that is inside of us? He say, what? Say, all the stars and the moon, everything is in us. And I was so happy. He says, sorry, I don't understand what you talk about. You never happens to you, say, no. I don't know what is that. I don't understand. And then for me, from that day, I understand in the school, the teachers, people who know everything, they don't know too. And then something fell in me. I began to disrespect everything, schools, teachers, parents. Wow, I discovered I am in a world of people who don't know the secret. Nobody sees it. But I had another problem. I cannot go back. How I can go back? And I remember I began to develop. I dream, in a vision, I dream a mirror. I can look myself, not the body, myself, and doesn't work. And I went to the stadium when I was a child. I used to go more advanced, 12 years old. I used to go to the stadium of soccer. I like soccer. But I went 2 hours before. And then I entered to the field and I sit in the middle. Maybe here I can go back to the center, and nothing happens. And I went, then I began to read books. As you see, I read books. Because my uncle Jorge, he was a philosopher, and one day he talked with me, and by chance I say, yeah, I had some experience, but I was so disappointed. He talked about big philosophy. And one day in the car, he stopped because he has a big factory. So for a moment he stopped to think, and I was sitting with him, and he said, and what do you think about this? And for some reason he talked about God and what is the concept of God. And I was totally, when I say, someday happens to me something interesting when I was 8 years old. And he say, what? And I told him. I say, what do you think? And he say, I wish something like that. And then I understand, wow, one will catch. I say, happens to you? He say, no, but I know what you talk about. That is enlightenment. You touch it for a moment without knowing what it is. It's amazing. And come back. Say, no, never come back. And then I continued to read and to study, and I went to the church. I talked with the priest, and you know the story. I walk. Until practice transcendental meditation. I did a teacher's training course. I practiced mantra meditation, mandala meditation, kundalini, and that. And I was in Hare Krishna and Shivananda and meet whoever, rabbis, whatever you want. And I meet rabbis and gurus and priests like my library. You can imagine.
At the age of 8, I had a mystical experience. I had the infinite fortune of being initiated by existence. In the silence of the night, the moon and the stars gave me diksha. However, A mystical experience is totally different from enlightenment because you are still present as an observer. Even if you observe the light, whatever is observed is an object, while enlightenment is pure subjectivity. So here Prabhuji makes a very significant clarification, which is significant in his message in general, which is the distinction between mystical experiences, any experience, and enlightenment. Prabhuji clarifies that enlightenment is not an experience. It's not an event that starts and ends, and it's not an occurrence when there is an experiencer and an experience. As long as there is an experiencer, it means that there is this entity, which is the ego, that is different than the experience. Prabhuji says that in enlightenment, we refer to what he calls it, Prabhuji, pure subjectivity, not the dual plane. And that even if we observe light, very transcendental experience, still it is different than us as observers, and therefore it does not refer to pure subjectivity, which is enlightenment. So this is in fact our first station in Prabhuji's answer to the question. The question that was asked is if enlightenment was the result of Prabhuji's practices. In fact, I think we get here two questions. One is regarding enlightenment and how can we be enlightened, or if practices can help us to be enlightened. At the same time, the question is regarding practices. What is the importance of spiritual practices? What is the goal in spiritual practices? What should we expect in them? And Prabhuji answers both of these questions. So in this first station, Prabhuji clarifies the distinction that we just mentioned. Oftentimes, we spiritual aspirants can cling to experiences, and there is a danger in it, then we will cling to experiences, whether they are genuine, transcendental, touch of the transcendence, or mental inventions, cling to these experiences, and this will fortify our identification with the egoic entity, which we don't need to say that this will not help us to transcend the egoic entity and to be established in our true nature, which is our aspiration as spiritual seekers, to be established in the pure subjectivity that Prabhuji speaks about. So in the clinging to experience, there is the danger that we will refer to it as something that gives us something, as an entity that makes us better in some way, that we possess something. Spiritual experience cannot be any possession. It is not ours. It has nothing to do with us. So anything that we attribute to ourselves as entities, as egos, has nothing to do with spiritual elevation. And in this first station, Prabhuji both makes this important distinction, and he also speaks about his experience as a child. And in this, clearly Prabhuji refers to some touch of the transcendence, of a very powerful experience, significant one, major in Prabhuji's biography, in Prabhuji's life, in Prabhuji's journey, and yet it is not the fulfillment of his journey, which is the distinction between the experience and the enlightenment. However, the fact that it was a very significant experience tells us something regarding the question that was asked, because clearly this experience did not come after any practice, after any knowledge, after any intention, after any understanding. We did mention the games that Prabhuji played, which were in a way perhaps some kind of practice that led him to the experience, but of course it wasn't a sādhanā or spiritual practice per se in order to get to some results. It was just a game. But so clearly this experience is something that happened not as a result of anything, but as an occurrence, as a spontaneous happening, which is what will Prabhuji explain to us further in this article regarding enlightenment. So let's continue with Prabhuji's words. After this first station, Prabhuji mentions his experience as a child, as a major one, as a first step, as something that is different than enlightenment, And I think when we can conclude from this presentation is that it is something that comes without any prior preparation, any prior knowledge, any prior sādhanā or understanding regarding meditation. Enlightenment is always unexpected and accidental. It is not an effect of a cause, nor a result of a practice. No methodology can grant it. Jesus, Buddha, Shankara, Moses, and others awakened to the reality under various circumstances. If we examine their lives, we will learn that enlightenment was an accident and happened to them in very particular situations. Dancing, singing, walking, sitting quietly, and so on. For some of them, it occurred in the tranquility of their homes. For others, in a mountain cave, in the desert, or the forest. Awakening can surprise you anywhere, just like falling in love. It is the same experience for all, yet everyone has their own love story. Okay, so now we get a clear answer to the question, was your enlightenment a result of your practices? Is enlightenment a result of some practice? Will it be a result of my practice? Prabhuji says, no. This is the short, simple, and clear answers. He clarifies that enlightenment is a spontaneous occurrence, unpredicted, inexplicable, unplanned, and that we can never design it, formulate it, cause it to happen. If it will happen, when it happens, it is going to be totally spontaneous, natural, unpredicted, just like life itself. So the answer that we get here again is no. Enlightenment is not a result of any practice. Spiritual practice or sādhanā is not meant for the attainment of moksha. The aim of prayer, hatha yoga, japa, pranayama, and meditation is not to enlighten us. Yoga Vidya creates appropriate conditions for enlightenment. Its purification methods help us overcome obstacles or impediments to facilitate the accident of enlightenment. So here we get a clarification from Prabhuji regarding the significance of sadhana, the meaning of sadhana or yoga vidya. In Vedanta, we are familiar with two limbs, two wings. One of them is Brahma Vidya, which is the knowledge of the self. And the other one is yoga vidya, which includes all the different practices that we can do, such as japa, meditation, hatha yoga, pranayama. Prabhuji mentions here a list of practices, and there are more. All these practices, Prabhuji tells us, are meant to purify our mind, are meant to make our conditions for the accident to happen more favorable. So we are preparing a better atmosphere, better conditions for this accident to happen. But yet it is an accident. In other words, we cannot force it. We cannot guarantee that it will happen. There is nothing that we can do that can bring this occurrence of enlightenment. As Prabhuji told us in the previous paragraph, we can see all kinds of life circumstances, different individualities, different beings, that this accident, this experience happened in their lives. But the Yoga Vidya, this rich, abundant path that rishis bring us, and this can also relate to other religions for sure, the practices that we do, can prepare again much more favorable situations in us for realization and better conditions for us to even start to walk on the path of Brahma Vidya and associate with this wisdom. When we are full of desires, of fears, of confusion, of mundane consciousness, oftentimes we are not even ready to start thinking about spiritual life. The atmosphere is not fitting. The mood is not fitting. And the practices will help us to be more ready to come in touch with this wisdom. And in any case, it is going to make our mind more sattvic, more positive, more harmonious. We will have less mental activity. We will be hopefully kinder and more cooperative. So all these spiritual practices can make our mind more sattvic again, which in itself can bring us benefit as egos, although this is not our aspiration as spiritual aspirants. As spiritual aspirants, we are aspiring to transcend this identification altogether, and this is always where Prabhuji will lead us. Prabhuji will never speak about benefits as an ego. However, the sādhanā, the spiritual practice, is probably a very favorable occupation that we can deal with as egos. If we cannot bring enlightenment, it's good that we occupy in preparation and in waiting. Prabhuji will talk in many references, in many places in his contents about the waiting. We can only wait. We can do nothing about enlightenment. But the spiritual practices are a wonderful preparation, are a wonderful way to wait. We cannot force sleep. In order to fall asleep, we have to create the proper environment. Draw the blinds, turn off the light, get into a comfortable bed, relax, and so on. But sleep can only fall upon us of its own accord. Similarly, there is no method for falling in love with someone. All you can do is to create the right conditions. Sleep and love, just like enlightenment, are accidents that simply happen. So this is another example, 2 examples that Prabhuji gives us that clarify to us the point very clearly, very evidently. Oftentimes we say that Prabhuji gives us examples to things that he explained regarding the spiritual advancement that sometimes can be difficult for us to understand because we are not still established in the spiritual vision, in the transcendental vision. However, when he gives us examples from our own life, immediately we get the point because this is so relatable, so clear. All of us, or at least most of us, except a few gifted individuals who can fall asleep whenever they want, know the situation that we really want to fall asleep, but there is nothing that we can do about it. We just have to create the conditions, pray, and maybe it will come and maybe it will not come. It is not in our hands, including the lucky, fortunate individual that it's easy for them to fall asleep. Even them, they don't do it. Just this accident happens in them more naturally. But Prabhuji calls it an accident because it's not something that we do. It happens. All of us know regarding falling in love, it is not in our own hands to decide with who we will fall in love. Sometimes we fall in love with the wrong person and another person can be really wonderful for us, but there is nothing we can do. We just don't manage to develop these feelings toward him. Similarly, Prabhuji tells us exactly in the same way, we cannot expect that enlightenment will happen to us by our own efforts, but it will happen on its own accord, just like these 2 examples that we can relate to so easily and so clearly. Existence is extremely creative and avoids copies. Looking at the ocean waves, the mountains, and the flowers, we notice that life dislikes repetition. Different religions have created methods that mimic the circumstances in which enlightened ones walk. If the prophet became enlightened while sitting, then the practice is to sit. If the saint found God while dancing, the sādhanā is to dance. These activities, however, are not the cause. If one master awoke while sitting, the reason was not the body position or the chair. If another discovered the divine while dancing, it was not because of the dance. So here Prabhuji tells us that existence does not like duplications. Anything existential, any experience that originates from life must be genuine, must be spontaneous, one-time event, something new that is unexpected, that we didn't create, that we didn't expect, that just happened. And this is something that we can witness, I think, in art very clearly, that there is something that we can enjoy which is not the skills, which is not the contact, which we cannot copy or imitate, but it's a happening. We can, of course, with the mind, with some mechanical understanding and creation, can create some product. We can force ourselves to write a few sentences, even without artificial intelligence. We can force ourselves to sing a song. But for the life to be expressed in a genuine way, in a fresh way, in a touching way, it needs to be something new that comes from the inside out. It cannot be something that we recreate with our mind, that we duplicate, that we imitate or mimic some experience of someone else. So we cannot expect that enlightenment, experience of life itself, purely in its totality, will happen due to some mental understanding and some mechanical actions. It must be genuine. We just watched recently a scene from a movie about Mozart with Prabhuji, and this is the example, therefore, that comes to my mind as someone who was ingenious because of the genuine nature that he had. Not just the skills, not just the practice, not just the knowledge, which of course was of great importance, but there were so many other that had the same degree of knowledge, of skills, of practice, of efforts. But in him there was something extra, superior, ingenious, that was this touch of life, the individuality that was expressed and that made him Mozart. Before undertaking a practice, it is very important to put it in its place. Every religion has developed its own practices, yet followers have not necessarily achieved the coveted result. Their methods have not always been effective in transcending illusion. Jews, Christians, Hindus, and Buddhists have imitated their prophets for centuries without attaining the desired divine goal. Such practices have transformed religion into a business. Whoever pays with the currency of practice will receive the desired merchandise. This has turned us into manipulators and opportunists. So here Prabhuji clarifies further regarding practices. Previously we heard from Prabhuji about the benefit of the sādhanā, the importance of the sādhanā, why it is favorable for us as spiritual practices under specific circumstances. However, Prabhuji says we need to put it in its place and to understand what is this practice and not expect from it what it cannot give us. And he clarifies further that evidently we can see so many practices that we receive in so many religions that have been practiced by so many practitioners for so many years and have not led the practitioners to the desired results of transcending the illusion. And this is a great important understanding in order to look carefully at what really this sadhana or spiritual practice is. If so many people practice specific techniques, methods, ideas, directions, and do not get the desired results, it definitely means that this practice is not any guarantee for the achievement of this result, as we heard previously from Prabhuji. And Prabhuji also tells us in this paragraph, what it also tells us, that this practice can be used for other goals and not for the original intention of these practices. We can use this method, these techniques, like businessmen. We want to do some actions in order to get the price that we are expecting. And with this attitude, we are not likely to get, obviously, the desired results if really what we want is to transcend illusion. There is no guarantee that we are going to do specific actions, including fasting or even severe austerities, and buy God with our actions. God is free. Enlightenment, we said, can happen only on its own accord. It is not in our hands. So if we think that we can control it, if we think that we can make it happen, most likely we will not succeed because our approach is wrong in the first place. All our attitude is wrong. If we're coming to the spiritual realm with a mentality of a politician, of a businessman, of a merchant, we are not speaking the language of the transcendence, of the devotee that we spoke about in the previous class, of the humility, of the acceptance, of the surrender. All these are favorable conditions that we want to create in order to allow this accident, that this accident will be likely to happen. If we think that we are controlling life and we are going to, by our own egoic actions, create some desired results, that we are the controllers, we are not in the favorable atmosphere, favorable conditions for such an happening for sure. Religion is unveiling our true existence in the reality of the present. If the practice is aimed at some goal, it projects us toward the future. Any sādhanā that seeks enlightenment, as elevated as it may be, distracts us from the present moment. The only alternative is to create favorable conditions and cultivate the art of waiting properly. Not expecting something in particular, but transforming ourselves into unconditional waiting. There is nothing left to do but to meditate with great trust in life. In the right moment, a ray of light will illuminate your soul. In that fatal divine accident, you will perish as someone to be reborn as the whole. And Prabhuji ends this article with a very empathetic advice to the person who asked this question and to all of us together with him. Reminding again that anything that we do with some goal in mind situate us in the tomorrow, in the future, in the position of a controller, of a businessman, of a manipulator, and take us from the present moment. We want to be situated in our reality, in the moment, with our own reality as it is. And in this way, Prabhuji tells us, in this in mind, in this intention in mind, we want to adapt the sādhanā, the spiritual practice. It doesn't mean that we want to reject the practice because we don't want to create future goals. But Prabhuji tells us we can still practice, but not with expectations, not with some desired result that will come out of our actions, but with enjoyment of the practice. We're situating ourselves in the practice, in the present moment, and help this practice to transform us and situate us more and more in acceptance and in the present moment in which we just wait. Waiting is very different than expecting, manipulating, controlling. We wait, but in this moment, without any idea when it will come, if it will come, but we can still wait because we want to be enlightened for sure. We want to transcend our illusion, our egoic identification. Naturally, we want to be happy, we want to be free, but we understand that this is not in our hands. We understand that we might not be ready yet, and we accept it, and we enjoy the process. This is the indication, I think, that we receive from Prabhuji in this last words of this article, when he approaches the person who asks, and tell him, don't worry. This is how Prabhuji concludes this article. In the right moment, a ray of light will come and enlighten your life. Live with this knowing, with this certainty, with this warm promise, we can say, from Prabhuji. It will come in the right moment. We don't have to force it. We don't need to force it, and we cannot force it in any case. So Prabhuji welcomes us here, as he does in so many other occasions, into this acceptance, into this waiting, into this relaxation, into the trust in life, in the universe, in God, in whatever needs to happen.
And one simple day in Haifa, I come back in the bus. You was in Yotam. And I come back in the bus. A simple day. A day that I gave up the searching. Because everything I did. But I meditate daily. But I meditate, sit and meditate more and more and more, because it was more like a custom. It was not anymore a real seeking. It was a custom to meditate, because I meditate so much. And that day I come to Yotam, I remember I entered to my room, and I remember, never forget, Swami Ramananda Order, my closet, there, work, around. I put a pillow when I sit. And from the moment I close my eyes, something happens. I remember I put a melody that will go with me forever. A very simple melody. It's not tan, tan, tan. No. I like to meditate with some music. So I put a simple melody. And that melody comes with such magic. From the moment I close my eyes with my, I don't know how you call them. Huh? Earphone. With the melody, I close my eyes, and everything was like magic. But I didn't look for something. I didn't expect something. Really surprised. And the silence was different. The silence was different. You have that melody, no? And that is the melody. And the silence was different. The space was different. And you see in front of you your body, your thoughts, your emotions, your I, this idea of I. And there is only witnessing, only. And the ocean of light. And the happiness, Then I practice, but not because I want to achieve something. I practice because I cannot separate from something. I enjoy it. 8 hours a day, Swami Ramananda say, wow, 8 hours a day. People who think I practice in order to achieve is wrong. I simply enjoy 11 hours a day. 11 hours only to enjoy the back home. And everything is consciousness. And this is the song. This is the melody. It's not that I hear it every day, but I keep it with such love. That simple melody was in that moment, and I hear it for a long time. I went out to the street. Nothing was new, but everything changed. Everything from that moment began to be so fresh. And then the development began. And every single moment from that day is to fly more and more and more and more and more. And will never end the development. You become that. When you touch the witnessing, that is to be God. When you touch the origin of the silver light, I don't know if somebody understands what I talk about, but anyway, the silver light, the light, not like this world, as I say when I was a child, is not this light. This is not light, this is darkness, or a dissipation of darkness, but not light. I reach the witness. This takes time, because first the mind is in direction of the witness slowly, but then to touch the witness, you realize you are the witnessing. You are it. It's you. It's you. It's you and joy of yourself. Crazy. but you enjoy of yourself and enjoy the beauty, the happiness, the bliss. And then this begin to go out. It's like the beloved go, and I pay attention that people, so nice. And they say, wow, you can see it? No, but we feel. So I say, wow. And always I do the double, like you and me, not only I am the light, but the devotee. And I always say, you see, they like you. They like you. Like yesterday, I was so tired, but I say, okay, I have nothing to say, take the control. Shh. And people feel it. But people are not in love with me or feel me or it's my presence or my Shakti, please. It's that. And I only put it on the table, enjoy it. It's not me as you, no. It's something else. This is not my presence. This is the presence of life, of existence. And only enjoy it, enjoy it. And like me, from 8 years old, 37 years, only don't forget, at least don't forget that is something really, really, really important in life. Life is not all these important things. All of you know, for sure, deep in the core of your being is a door to an infinite, eternal ocean of light, silver light of happiness, joy. You are everything what you want. And that wait for you. You can call it as you want, doesn't matter. And that light is love, the real love. And this presence you feel is not my presence, is not me. Is that live in the core of your being. And when you feel it's only, you feel this calling from somewhere deep. That is what you feel. I wish all of you to realize one day, in this incarnation or future incarnation, doesn't matter, but to go back home, not continue to looking after another person, another place, go back home, because you feel at home, finally, after so many incarnations of looking after something or somebody,